Hello and welcome to Independence live stream. I'm here with Ben and Marlon from CommonSpace.Scot and Marlon from Pensioners for Indy Glasgow, and she'll be co-hosting with me today. So very excited about this. Okay, so you can hear me okay, guys? Yeah? Just get Marlon, get the cans on. Yeah, all okay? Right, so Ben, great talking to you again.
I'm glad to be back. It's been a while since I've been in here.
It has been a while, hasn't it?
It's been too long.
Absolutely. So let's start off, Ben. What are the big stories at CommonSpace at the moment?
So, I mean, the big story over the last week, the last few days, has been the drug deaths issue, which is multifaceted. It's not as straightforward as any politician of any party would like to make it out to be, but it says a lot about how much further Scotland's got to go in overcoming its inequalities and its social problems. You know, there's still a long way to go, and I did a piece about it yesterday where basically I said, yes, blame Westminster for this, because Westminster does have to take the blame for this, but also blame Hollywood for conforming too much to the norms of how Britain does things.
Yeah.
You know, until quite recently, we were still going on about the war on drugs as, you know, the way to tackle things. Actually, I looked at the first election campaign of the Labour Party in 1999 for the Scottish Parliament elections. Donald Dewar, his main campaign slogan was "Tackle the war on drugs." So these British ways and British and American ways of tackling this problem that have totally failed, have failed for years and years and years, we're still not properly got that out of Scotland's system in terms of approaching things in a way which is public health focused, socially focused, about treatment. So there's a lot of interesting things to talk about in that, but I guess that's probably the big news item in Scotland right now.
I read that piece that you did yesterday. Well, I read it this morning. I thought I'd better do some homework.
Well done. I'm glad someone did.
Yeah, I read it. No, I thought it was really good, Ben. I just thought that kind of, as you've just said, kind of saying, well, you know, Scottish Government had a plan in place and then it gets refused by the Home Office. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, even the BBC and Sky have picked up a bit on that. But yeah, I thought it was really good, sort of not going by the norms of, you know, UK really. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not sure how you can avoid it.
Mm-hmm. A bit closer than Ike.
Okay,
I think.
I'm not sure how you can overcome that, but I just thought it was a good kind of context to put it all in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what can Holyrood do?
So the thing about drugs is, obviously, drug policy is a Westminster reserved issue. Mm. So in terms of issues around like legalisation or not legalisation and all that sort of thing, Holyrood can't do anything, right? And then there's other areas where Holyrood can't do much, like, for example, the safety consumption rooms has been blocked by Westminster. So those things it can do. But of course, drugs is not just about drug enforcement policy or legalisation. It's also about treatment. It's about health, public health in general. It's about child poverty. It's about homelessness. So it's about the social issues around poverty. You know, that's what fosters a climate in which this sort of thing happens. So a lot of those things, you know, is within the Scottish Parliament's powers, within certain limits, within certain financial limits. We don't have full control of financial powers, so issues like austerity obviously come into it. But there is things you can do, and if you look at what a lot of public health experts say, especially the issues around treatment, there needs to be much more investment in treatment and in tackling this as a public health issue, rather than, there's still too much money spent on the drug enforcement side of it and not enough spent on the treatment side of it. So that would be my take. I think that's what a lot of the public health experts are saying, that there needs to be much more investment put into tackling the treatment side of it. Norway is a good model for doing this. In fact, the Scottish Government are looking at Norway's model for doing it, where it had, like us, rising drug deaths over time. Because remember, this isn't something, it's not like this is a crisis that started last year. No, this is something from the 80s and 90s.
80s and 90s, and people getting older now.
So Norway had the same issue, but what it did is it started investing heavily in treatment right, and moving away from the sort of criminal enforcement side. And it has levelled off in Norway. The drug deaths have levelled off since it did that from about the mid-2000s. So that's one model for how the Scottish Government could work to tackle it. We should say that Westminster is a barrier and is a problem, but it's too easy just to say that. There's things there's things the Scottish Parliament can do as well.
Okay, so what about you, Marlon? Have you got any further thoughts on this? Are you?
It's not an area that I have any hands-on experience with.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was just shocked when I saw those figures. I mean, you know, you could sort of say, well, the way they present it is a bit, you know, if you just give absolute figures and you show that graph, it looks, well, it's shocking and it's alarming. But even when you put it into a bit of a better context, like, you know, deaths per million people in the population or whatever, it's still pretty bad. And you know, the UK and Scotland are among some of the worst in Europe, and presumably that is because of the kind of way that, you know, we've been approaching it, as you know, as Ben's been saying.
There seems to be a massive failure UK-wide in the drugs policy, isn't there?
Absolutely.
With these amounts of death. But yeah, the mainstream media seem to have been making hay, as I say, and really try to portray the Scottish Parliament in a really bad picture, as if, you know, this is all their responsibility from the headlines that I've looked at anyway in the newspapers. But it's really too serious an issue for that kind of, you know, politicising.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, Sky News, which I didn't see, but the BBC Beyond 100 Days team, they were talking about it last night. I mean, of course, that programme's done jointly between London and Washington, so they were comparing it with American figures. And, you know, when you looked at it, the number of deaths per million of the population for Scotland is a little bit, it's one person more, but, you know, it's the same as the States, and that's obviously can't be good.
Yeah.
But actually, Christian Fraser on that programme did say towards the end of it, he made the point that, you know, there'd been the scheme for treatment rooms and which had been turned down by the Home Office. So there was a bit of, you know, context there. It wasn't all just kind of having a go at Holyrood. But
and I think we should turn that on its head when that argument is made from the union side. Oh, look how bad it is in Scotland. Scotland is part of the UK.
Yeah.
So the reason why we've got this sort of society with such inequities as we do is because we're part of it's a UK system that we're part of and we remain part of. And this is, as I said before, this is a long-running thing. This goes back to the 80s. This isn't a crisis that happened overnight. So to pin it solely on the Scottish Government is a nonsense. And every party, look, the way party politics works is you blame the other side, right? So, of course, Labour are going to blame the SNP, the SNP are going to blame Westminster. That's the way party politics works. But from like a media perspective, we should take a step back and say, let's look at the roots of this crisis. You know, let's look at why this has happened. And tackle it from there rather than get into this nonsense.
You're making a big mistake there. You've been far too sensible here. This is a problem, isn't it? You know, when they're point scoring, the mainstream media, especially the unionist-driven agenda and that, you know, it's getting to the root of the problem and actually dealing with it in, you know, a grown-up manner, sensible manner. But hopefully, you know, the Holyrood can do something about it, you know, and
I think things are changing on it. So they've appointed a sort of task force now, a special task force to tackle drug deaths specifically. At the end of last year, the Scottish Government established a new strategy on drugs and alcohol, to tackle drugs and alcohol abuse that was much more health focused. So I think there is. I mean, you look at the cover of the Daily Record a couple of weeks ago, where the front cover, and you think probably these are the newspapers that have perpetuated the whole idea of, you know, we had to crack down on the drug users for years and years and years. Now their front cover is saying that we need to look at legalising drugs and a public health based approach to this issue. So I think there is a change in the political climate around it. So I think there will be progress made, but obviously the statistics are, they are what they are, you know, they are absolutely
Yeah, they are
shocking.
dreadful. Yeah, I mean, that Daily Record front page, I saw it, and saw it on Facebook, I think. And I kind of went back and read it a few times. I thought, well, they are actually calling for, you know, a much more humanitarian kind of approach to it. And actually, they were also calling for more powers to go to Holyrood to let them do it,
Yes.
which was big turnaround.
No,
So it's encouraging.
that is encouraging,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And not playing into, you know, one of the big problems with this issue is it's been easy for politicians over the years to play into the sort of, you know, drug abusers or scum kind of, the kind of hatred there is, you know, like the lowest of the low, like we need to throw them in the jail, that'll show them. It's not, you know, the media for many, many years played into that narrative, and a lot of the papers still do. You know, read Daily Express or something like that, and it'll be all that sort of stuff probably today. I don't know, I've not looked at it. But there is a change in how the media are reporting on it, and that will make a difference to how politicians deal with the issue as well, you know.
How does this relate to poverty issues?
Of
An
course.
increase?
Of course, it's connected to poverty and austerity, but it's important to say it's not just about austerity, because austerity started in 2010, whereas this is an issue going back to the 80s, deindustrialisation, you know, Thatcherism.
Yeah.
Like it's got deep roots in Scottish society and British society.
Yeah.
So it's too easy to have like a kind of superficial take, you know, that says it's because of cuts and that's it. No, it's like, I think the way to think about it is like it's like the sharp end of inequality, you know.
Aye, yeah.
It's like really the kind of most gut-wrenching end of it, you know. Because if you look at the places where the drug deaths are worst, it's parts of Glasgow, Dundee. You know, places where the biggest inequalities in poverty. So of course it's tied into deep-rooted social problems.
Yeah. So a big issue. Hopefully, you know, things will get turned around by Holyrood. Other things that are happening in the news. Donald Trump. He's always a good one to bring up. What's
He's making the headlines again, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, that's his strategy, isn't it? He makes the headlines. He comes in with something absolutely, you know, atrocious, like what he's been saying about those 4 congresswomen, and it distracts people.
Yes, and I think he's setting up for the 2020 election now, and that's going to be his narrative, that the Democrats are, you know, crazed communists, and also, you know, there's quite a lot of ethnic minorities, and they like to stick up for ethnic minorities, so kick them out of the country. You know, it's playing up to the most reactionary sentiments in society, the most racist sentiments in society. It's pretty appalling. But I think it's going to be interesting how the Democrats deal with it. Because it is the case that the 4 women who have been targeted by Trump are on the radical left of the party, you know, the more socialist perspective on things. And the mainstream of the Democrats have been trying to distance themselves from them because they want to be the kind of centrist, Hillary Clinton type politics. But the big thing will be, who's the candidate to challenge Trump? Is it going to be a Bernie Sanders, who is like a sort of socialist perspective? Or is it going to be a kind of liberal, centrist, we just don't want Trump, but we don't want things to change, you know, we don't want to fundamentally change American society? I think that would be a big mistake if they went down a kind of Hillary Clinton route again. So we'll see. I think the primaries are starting soon in the Democrats to choose the candidate. I think it's over the next 6 months. So we'll see what happens.
What's your own personal favourite there, Ben?
I like Bernie. I think Bernie's talking about class inequality. He's talking about the sort of the real roots of the, you know, like the billionaire class in America, the roots of the problems in American society, and he's got a kind of socialist perspective on it. So that's where I come from. That's what my politics are. So I think he would be. I think Trump versus Bernie Sanders would be divide things in the right way. You know. Not divide things based on, you know, your ethnicity, but based on who your interests are. Trump is he's a racist and all that, but he's also a billionaire property tycoon. Yeah. You know, he represents a certain class interest of, you know, in America, unbelievable levels of inequality, even greater than here. So to me, that would be what I would like to see in the presidential election.
Yeah, do you think anything's going to come off? I mean, when he started those kind of racist type tweets, do you think anything will come off that? I mean,
Well, the House, today, I think yesterday, the House of Representatives has passed a motion, censuring him for what he said. But what does it mean? It's all public relations, isn't it? It's all a battle for hearts and minds, and Trump thinks he can win people over by speaking to the most reactionary, xenophobic sentiments. So, will anything come of it? It's all about what the public opinion is.
he seems to be Teflon man. It doesn't matter.
Well, he's got no shame, has he?
He's got no shame.
And it's quite difficult to attack someone and say, you can call them whatever name you want, but if someone's got no shame, then it bounces off them. But that's the dangerous thing, because someone without shame means what can they not do?
Yeah.
He is putting people into virtual concentration camps on the border with Mexico, kids, and he's getting away with it because he's saying that this is what he needs to do to protect America. So.
And then he throws in these tweets, and it completely takes over the news cycle for a couple of days, really. I mean, over here as well. I was listening to BBC Breakfast News this morning, and Dan Walker was interviewing a American woman whom they've called on before on that programme just to talk about Trump. She's a supporter, and even she was disowning the language. Although she also said, he's not really a racist, and I kind of know that, and then took up his theme, which is about you've got to protect America from socialism and socialists. And Dan Walker, I mean, give him his due, he went for, he really pursued her and over the language and inequalities and everything. And she looked a bit shaken at one point because for breakfast news, which isn't,
it's usually quite sedate.
It's usually quite kind of, not exactly maybe sedate, but, kind of quietish. Anyway, they finished that interview, and then he was co-presenting with Naga, I can't remember her surname, and she was obviously having to contain herself. And Dan noticed that and said, "What are you feeling right now?" And she went, "You will not believe how furiously angry I am she says, I've had that. I get people telling me to go home. So when, President of the United States does that, that just encourages everyone else. It gives them room to repeat it, really." So for once, I was quite impressed with BBC News. I thought the pair of them did a good job.
Well, we should talk about the UK's role in terms of Trump. It wasn't so long ago he was here for a state visit.
Yeah.
And Theresa May issues a statement saying it's unacceptable what he said, right, to telling people to go home. She put "go home" posters on vans going around London.
Of course.
So there's a lot of hypocrisy there as well in terms of the UK's relationship with Trump and its relationship with racism too.
It's that kind of lowest common denominator, isn't it? When you're appealing to people, it's blame others, find a group, blame others. But and also the various allegations against them about sexually this, that, and the next thing. That's just, I mean, anybody else that'd have downed, but President in America. I mean, he seems to have really tarnished that thing of being president of America. Is this the worst American president ever?
Hard to say.
Certainly the worst that I've certainly the worst in my lifetime.
Yeah,
it depends how you judge it as well, isn't it? I mean, George Bush was pretty bad. Look at the war in Iraq.
I thought he was pretty bad. You're right.
But now we think he wasn't. Maybe he was okay.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Sorry.
I was just going to say that what I find even kind of worse in a way than Trump is the fact that the Republicans won't call him out. I mean, one or two of them are, and one or two of them have over the various stuff that's come out with in this recent set of tweets. But mostly they don't. And that just means that he gives him more and more kind of fuel for carrying on as that way of campaigning. And it calls to the lowest common denominator. But for them to sit there and just let him take over their party, which is what he's done, for the sake of power,
It's become normalised.
it's become normalised. I think that it's shameful, really is.
You know, a lot of what he's done just seems appalling to me. And you wonder what goes through the minds of like voters and stuff. But one of the big polarising issues in the USA is abortion, and he's given it, you know, I'm totally against abortion, blah blah blah, etc. He's, you know, got the judges to the Supreme Court. He's, you know, appointed more right-wing kind of anti-abortion type judges to that. So that seems to be a tactic, doesn't it? Like appealing to that religious anti-abortion side.
That's his base.
But he can say whatever the hell he wants. He can be sexist and racist and whatever he wants. But as long as he sticks to, you know, anti-abortion line, he seems to kind of win people over. The religious angle.
When you think
Would that be
how abysmal his own, you know, morals are, and then he goes to a prayer meeting on a Sunday with these, you know, pretty what seem to me to be pretty fundamentalist Christians, and they all put their hands on him, and then he carries on the next week.
It's like, it's I find that a hard one, really. You know,
And of course, people who take the lead from Trump in America, right? Like in Alabama recently, a woman was prosecuted after being shot in the stomach and her baby dying.
That's right.
They
I
didn't
mean,
prosecute the guy who pulled the trigger.
But then it just like
That's
mind blowing stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that's people who more radical than Trump, but who take their lead from the kind of
Yeah.
the kind of environment he's created.
He's
in
encouraged
American
it. He
society.
absolutely has encouraged this. You know, the worst elements of the right wing. You know. But
Well, not unknown over here either.
well, this is happening here again. It's been reflected here, isn't it?
With the, with the
Tommy
whole kind of
Robinson
Brexit and Tommy Robinson.
etc.
Yeah.
He's been, you know, given an open, you know, playing field just to go out there and say what he wants. Really, are encouraged. So that's not kind of looking too good. But anyway, anything hopeful coming out of the USA, Ben? Anything good?
Well,
any good stuff?
I
Tell
think
me.
it's good that these 4 women
Yeah.
are in the spotlight, because that wouldn't have been the case 4 or 5 years ago. Like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has got very radical ideas about how to change society, you know, and that's a new thing. That there's a strong left in the Democrats who are willing to, you know, speak out against their own party sometimes and challenge things, and you know, are much more critical of the sort of American system, American capitalism, and I think that's progress. So I would say that's a positive. I think if Bernie Sanders, like America, because America's such a polarised society, it can swing one way and then the other. I mean, it swung from Obama to Trump, so it could swing from Trump to Bernie Sanders. You know, it's possible for that to happen because it's such a divided society. So things could change quite quickly in America. I think that would be the hopeful thing I would take from it.
Do you think the Democrats would allow him to be the representative?
Well, there's all this talk about how there was kind of fixed against them last time. You know, there was the National Democratic Committee or whatever was like basically working. It's supposed to be the neutral body, and the Democrats were basically working on behalf of Hillary apparently. So I don't know enough about it to know that, but I know he's one of the favourites. I think him and Joe Biden are the 2 favourites right now. So we'll see.
When does that take place? When does any idea?
Do you know?
It's starting quite soon. I mean, it's a process that's spread over quite a long period of time, because they go state by state. They don't all happen. Primaries don't all happen at the same time. I think there's some coming up. Can't remember which states it is. So it's starting quite soon, and it'll go on for a while. And then, of course, the Republican primaries will start as well.
Well, do they have them, or is it just Trump is the pick? Do they have to go through that process? I don't know.
Well, I think I suppose it depends if anyone steps up and to
Challenge
oppose him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If no one does, and he gets just a walk through, but.
So do you think Trump will be a good friend of the UK once Brexit?
Well, this is the big thing.
Think they'll get a good trade
I think
deal?
this is really important. Actually, I wrote a piece of this a while back when Trump was over, and him and the ambassador to the UK both said the same thing. So there seemed to be a bit of message discipline around saying everything needs to be on the table with the trade deal, including the NHS. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big opening for the independence movement. You know, the idea that the NHS could be up, you know, could be basically in Trump's hands is something that's hardly anyone in Scottish society would support. You know, a tiny fraction of Scottish society would think that's an acceptable state of affairs.
Yeah.
So the NHS possibly being part of a trade deal with Trump is something I think the independence movement should focus on and make as something to say. This shows you how vulnerable we are to being exposed to the ravages of the American system. I mean, the American health system is absolutely appalling. It's like absolutely disgusting. People, you know, can be left on the side of a road because they don't have health insurance. You know, it's just terrible.
Yeah.
So that's
They sometimes they're queuing, if people who haven't got the money for the insurance are queuing up, you know, for hours and hours and hours beforehand to get free treatment at clinics when they open. And you've got these folk who are obviously seriously ill, sitting there waiting for the doors to open.
And I don't think Boris Johnson in this campaign has been put under enough pressure about that, on what he's going to do in terms of a US-British trade deal. That should be one of the main questions I ask him. That's one of the big things that's going to come out of Brexit is what's going to happen with the trade deal with America, because that will define the kind of framework for all the other trade deals as well. You know, the kind of limits of what's, you know, what's doable in terms of like deregulating, reducing health and safety, you know, those sorts of things. He said he's opposed to chlorinated chicken coming over. I don't know. I think he said the NHS would be off limits, but the US have said that needs to be on the table. So it's going to be one. It's a negotiation, you know.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a really important issue. But obviously, Brexit's actually got to happen first, and God knows what's going to happen with that, you know.
And I mean, when you think about it, on the say post-Brexit, and they're trying to do a trade deal on the one hand with America, with all those pressures coming in, and chlorinated chicken maybe, you know, meat that's been fed with kind of compounds that we wouldn't use over here, antibiotics in particular, GM crops kind of coming in. All of that on the one hand that Americans would want to be able to sell their products over here, and on the other hand they're trying to do a trade deal with the European Union who won't have any of that. I mean, how you square that with letting some things into the country and trying to do a deal with EU who are going, no way are we going to let that go from Britain to Europe, and then that possibly have an effect on the kind of terms that they'll want. I can't believe that anyone would find that hard to do, those two negotiations. I can't believe that Boris Johnson's got the ability to do it.
Do you think, I mean, I think Boris Johnson's definitely going to win, right? It's almost certain now. Like, my kind of impression is that the bubble's going to burst extremely quickly. Like, I don't think he's got any plan for how to deliver Brexit. I don't think he's got any plan for post-Brexit, but I'm not even sure he's going to get to there. I mean, they've hardly got a majority at all. They've got a majority of 1 or 2 now. So I think the thing's going to fall apart quite quickly. The Boris government is going to fall apart quite quickly. He might go for a general election. That's the one thing that could potentially get him out of this mess, because if he can rearrange, if he can get a kind of bounce when he comes in, a kind of I'm the Brexiteer bounce, but before being exposed by the fact that he can't deliver it, and do an election, then try and bring the Brexit Party voters back on side with him, then he could get a big enough support in the Parliament to do something. But with the Parliament, with the way it is right now, it's really difficult to see how this is going to play out.
Yeah, especially when you've got Tories on the more left wing of their party coming out and saying they're prepared to vote him down.
Yes.
Well, I mean, they must be really frightened about the Brexit Party, no? I mean,
yes,
that'll be pushing them to, we are definitely coming out of Europe, right? Definitely. So if there's a general election, they're going to have to, would they do a deal with the Brexit Party? I mean, Farage, be leading it.
I think what they would say is, I'm going to deliver no deal Brexit, so come and support me and don't vote for the Brexit Party. Whether that'll work or not, it's a big risk.
Yeah.
It would be doing a general election would be a huge risk for the Conservatives. They only got 8.8% in the European elections. I mean, that's unthinkably bad for the Conservatives. So it would be a huge risk to do a general election, but there are options. What are the options?
Yeah.
What's the alternative? How is he going to get Brexit through? I don't see the pathway.
But as in the default, we're coming out. We're coming out. If no deal with the EU, we're still coming out, no matter what. Come the 31st October, right? So there's no stopping it.
To me, I think the House of Commons can stop it. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for the Prime Minister to basically say what the House of Commons thinks doesn't matter. If there's a majority against no deal, then there's things the British Parliament can do to put the brakes on it. It pretty much censured Theresa May from delivering it last time. Now, Theresa May probably didn't have the kind of commitment to no deal that Boris Johnson did. But I find it very difficult to imagine how he's going to force it through the Parliament. I mean, all this stuff about proroguing Parliament, like shutting down Parliament early, I don't see that happening. So I don't think it's as simple as saying because that's what's in legislation now that no deal happens if there's no deal, that's what's going to actually happen because the Parliament's opposed to no deal.
I mean, it's a shame that, of course this is in retrospect, but it's a real shame that the Labour Party in Westminster didn't support Joanna Cherry's motion some months back, which was, if she hears this, she'll probably, this is a bit of a summary of it, but it was basically, if we got to the stage where no deal was being called for, that would automatically mean revoking Article 50. So it was a way of stopping no deal.
The default wasn't no deal. It was Article
50. That's
revoking
right.
Article 50.
That's right. And they didn't support it. I mean, the Labour Party said, well, it wasn't the right time to have that motion, and there would come, there would be a better time for it. Well, maybe that's turned out to be not the case now, because that would have at least have made it that would have been the default, whereas as it is, default would seem to be no deal.
But that idea might not be dead.
No, it might not be
come
dead.
back again.
It could come back again. Yeah.
So you still think there's a glimmer of hope that we could still remain part of the EU and Article 50 will be revoked? Is there a glimmer of hope there? Is there?
It's possible. I wouldn't say it's the most likely thing.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's going to happen.
Well,
but what is going to happen? That's the thing. It's hard to know what the pathway is to Brexit happening.
Well, if we're kicked out, right, we're going to WTO rules, aren't we? So the UK would have to do trade deals all over again that the EU have done for all these different countries and trading blocks.
Yeah. Although we'll have to do that anyway, even if we come out with a deal with this deal, which isn't the trade deal.
We would have to do
that
anyway.
To start doing that anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, we wouldn't be starting maybe from basic WTO rules.
Okay, so let's say, right, the chances are we're definitely coming out, right? Switching over to Holyrood here. This bill that was put through, that's going through to do with the referendum bill, right? We've also recently had Angus McNeil and Chris McAnally, is it? Talking about Plan B, right? Which is if we have a general election, the SNP putting a manifesto, if there is a pro-Indy majority, that's it. It'll be independence, right? Now, that's not going to happen at SNP conference. It's not been added, right? So that's a statement in itself, okay? What can we do? Right, can you explain this referendum bill? Will that protect us? Right, if the, Westminster keeps saying, nah, you're not getting it, another referendum? Have you got any ideas there?
I mean, as I understand it, the referendum bill is, if it passes, that will mean that the Scottish Parliament then requests a Section 30 order to hold a referendum. So it doesn't allow for a legally binding referendum in and of itself, right? I think my view on this is that Nicola Sturgeon has more or less accepted that there needs to be an agreement with the UK government to hold a legally binding referendum before it happens, right? I think she's pretty much opposed to the Catalan route of doing things. I think she's opposed to Angus MacNeil's route of a pro-Indian majority for doing things. And I think that does box the independence movement in, because think about it from the Conservatives' perspective, right? When you agreed to hold in 2012, when you agreed to the Edinburgh Agreement in 2012, right, independence was on something like 32% in the polls, right? There hadn't been Brexit and the whole Brexit referendum, the shock of the Brexit referendum. You thought that this is going to smash Scottish nationalism for a generation, right? So agree to hold the referendum and beat Scottish nationalism, destroy the SNP. That was David Cameron's vision, right? And nothing to do with, you know, David Cameron respecting democratic rights or anything like that. It was about a Tory strategy to destroy the SNP, right? What incentive do the Tories have to allow a referendum to happen now? I don't see any incentive. I don't see any political incentive, because their base in Scottish society don't want a referendum to happen. I don't see any incentive in terms of, you know, tactical machinations with the SNP. They've got no incentive to hold a referendum, so they won't agree to one. And actually, if you looked at, you know, the Union Cabinet, was it last week? They held this Union Cabinet at Westminster. It was quite very interesting. You look at it, right? David Liddington, the Cabinet Secretary, done a presentation on the future of the Union, and he basically said, we're struggling in Wales, we're struggling in Ireland, we're struggling in Scotland, everything's going bad, right? But one of the things he said, which wasn't really picked up on, was an SNP majority in 2021 Holyrood elections will further intensify the pressure on the Union. So already the Tories are looking ahead of this. They're not even considering the notion that they would accept a referendum before 2021, as Nicola Sturgeon wants to do for the referendum bill. So, to be honest, with Sturgeon's route, I don't see a referendum happening next year. I don't think it's possible that it's going to happen under a Tory government. It could change. There could be a general election. All sorts of things could happen. We don't know what's going to happen with Brexit as well. So it's a fluid situation. But as it stands, I'm very pessimistic about the idea there'll be a referendum next year. I don't see it happening. I think after 2021 Holyrood elections, after the next general election, could be a totally different picture. But the Tories there's no way the Tories are going to agree to hold a referendum.
I think that's right. But as you say, they've got no reason whatsoever to agree to one from their point of view of their own, you know, interests. I can understand. I mean, I can understand if, you know, if it's Nicola's and the rest of the Scottish government's strategy at the moment is to stick to thinking in terms of a referendum. I can understand that. But do you not think when the discourse changes, or let's say the discourse changes and Boris is in power down and this union cabinet and all the kind of seemingly plans for, you know, coming up here and spending money directly from Westminster in Scotland and not going through Holyrood, if that starts to happen and the language starts to be stridently against letting having a referendum, do you not think that then pushes them into the next phase, which, you know, where you do start looking at other options? And you know, this referendum bill that they're putting through Holyrood, it's clever. It's not just about an independence referendum. It's setting up the ground rules for any referendum in the future that Holyrood might call. And one of the good things is it's going to write in, you know, legally, then it'll be people from, 16-year-olds up. That might have happened anyway, since they've already got the vote. But also people who are based in Scotland, so i.e. EU citizens, can't be excluded from future referendums. So it's clever in that way. But I mean, I think you're right. At the moment, it's not, like, you can't see any way forward that's going to happen up here. So I think then that pushes the SNP into their next kind of approach, and maybe some of what Angus MacNeil's been saying might happen.
Do bills passed by the Scottish Parliament actually mean anything when it comes to Westminster? Can they override any Scottish bill?
Well, it's not a question so much of overriding it, as I understand it. It's more a question of if the bill passes, and as you say, it's for referendums as a whole, it's a bill for referendums as a whole, the Scottish Parliament then has to agree that it's going to approach the Scottish government, with the UK government, about holding an independence referendum specifically, right? And agreeing to a Section 30 order so it can hold an independence referendum specifically. That the process that, as I understand it, tell me if I'm wrong, the process that led Alex Salmond and David Cameron to agree to the Edinburgh Agreement, that hasn't fundamentally changed.
No.
And that won't be fundamentally changed by this bill. So it's still reliant on the consent of the UK government to hold a legally binding referendum. Now, to me, it does. To me, it would be better if Nicola Sturgeon was a bit more flexible, right? Even if that's her plan A. If she was a bit more flexible in appearing to be open to other plans and other routes, because then that can apply leverage on the UK government to do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if you look
yeah.
like you're only willing to go down this one route, then it's really easy to block it off.
I'm reminded, as probably we all are, about the currency. Right, it's just it's the same, the currency. We want the pound. That's it. We want the pound, and then just Westminster Unionists.
No
just
plan B. Yeah.
No plan B. And
But going back to what Ben was just saying about, if she was a bit more flexible, that could put some pressure on Westminster, which is a bit of the argument that the Brexiteers use for no deal, isn't it? It puts pressure on EU, except I don't think it does really put pressure on the EU. But going back to that it's kind of like, when you're putting it like that, Ben, it's a bit like another example of where maybe Holyrood and Scottish politicians, especially independent supporting ones, need to kind of stop supporting the UK norm way of going about things, isn't it? It's another example of that.
I think that's right. I think the thing is, the principle of democracy is more important than the norms of how things are done in the British system. It's more important to say Scotland has a right to self-determination. Therefore, we have a right to hold to decide on our constitutional future, regardless of what Westminster does. If you stay boxed into the kind of norms of how things have been done in the past, which can easily be blocked by anti-democratic UK government, then it does limit the possibilities. I don't necessarily think the Angus MacNeil's idea is the best one. I think maybe a consultative referendum and then use that to just put pressure on for either a legally binding one or for independence to happen was maybe a better route. I think it's difficult to make a domestic Scottish election like a kind of yes-no election about independence, because...
Would that be the last resort?
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that as a potential last resort, yeah. Thatcher always said that if there was a SNP majority in a Westminster election, SNP majority in Scotland in a Westminster election, that would be a mandate for independence. So there's some, the goalposts have been shifted a lot.
Goalposts have been changed, although it's easier to get with the first past the post set up. It's actually easier to get the SNP majority in Westminster. It's a bit trickier to get it for Holyrood, given our complicated, regional and constituency.
Well, it was designed to stop.
That from
happening.
And of course, Ruth Davidson now says the SNP needs a majority, not that you need a pro-independence majority. I mean, it's just making up the rules as they go along. So the Greens aren't allowed to be pro-independence? Is that what that means? Only one party is allowed to be represent support for independence. It's a nonsense. There's no democratic principle there at all. It is just trying to find new and original ways to block a referendum from happening, because that's the last defence really of the union, is to just block democracy from occurring, which unfortunately they are in a position to do. The Tories are in a position to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I think also going back to something you said earlier, I mean, you were talking about, making a point about, say, the difference between what would happen to the NHS if, if the American deal brought in changes like that, and the independence movement should be making more of that. So just as another example of that, if I can retain my line of thought there. Yeah, we should be doing the same with other things. I mean, we could be independence movement actually could be just drawing a lot of comparisons at the moment with even what's happening in English NHS, where a lot of it's been privatised. A bit here and a little bit there, and GP practices, a lot of them are privatised. So maybe that's where we have to. Maybe that's where we have to go with it, and make the point that there's a different way of doing it, and where we're being stymied by those sorts of norms, but really kind of making that part of the public discourse up here.
Because I don't think the wrangling over a referendum is going to move the polls. It has to be, as you say, about things like the NHS. a PhD, a PhD student was met me as part of their research, right? Because they're looking at the independence referendum 2014, right? Obviously, it's coming up to the 5-year anniversary now, right? So it's quite interesting. I don't know if you guys are doing anything on it. We're going to do some 5-year things to mark the anniversary.
Completely forgot about it.
But it's quite interesting to think about it, because when he was asking me about what were the things that worked and what didn't work, it did remind me that there was a period just before the referendum where Yes Scotland started focusing its energies on yes for NHS, and that sort of positive message about the NHS, but also contrasting Scotland to the UK in that way. I think that is the sort of thing that will cut through, because NHS is a sort of issue that it has support, broader support than any party. You know what I mean? It can reach into a lot of aspects of it can reach quite deep into Scottish society in the way other issues can't. In the way, for example, talking about like Boris Johnson's Islamophobia. Okay, that's an important issue, but it's not going to reach deep into Scottish society like saying the NHS is under threat. So it's, to me, that positive campaign and contrasting, protecting public service NHS to Brexit bit and Trump. That, to me, that's the sort of campaigning we should be doing.
Okay, brilliant. I can't believe the time. I've been speaking for about nearly 50 minutes.
Oh, flies by.
It absolutely does. I'm just checking our time here. Okay, another 7 minutes. Ben, so tell me what's happening at CommonSpace. What's your plans down there?
So I've been editor now for maybe about a year and a half. Yeah. And
congratulations, mate.
Thanks. What I've been trying to do with the site is, previously what we're doing is basically just focus entirely on like news reporting, written news. I've been trying to diversify our content a bit. So we do weekly podcasts now. Called Beyond the Noise.
We put them out in the Indie Live Radio.
That's right, you do. I've got to make sure David is following up on that to do that every week. I don't think he's supposed to be loading them up himself, isn't he, onto Indie Live Radio? So I'll check that he's doing that. We've just got a studio set up at our office now, and we've just started doing bi-weekly shows. So it's called the CommonSpace Show. It's on every 2 weeks, where we look at the issues, a bit like we've done today actually, discuss the kind of issues in the news, we have a guest in, that sort of thing. So we're doing kind of more diverse content now, more videos. We've got a couple of video journalists at CommonSpace now, so we're trying to, our focus is the same. It's a kind of critical pro-indie perspective from the left. So it's the same as it's been before, but we're trying to diversify the ways in which our content is.
Sorry, I missed that. I was distracted there, Ben. Did you say every 2 weeks you do the office?
We do the show, CommonSpace Show.
Is that the live stream?
No, it's not a live stream. We did experiment with a live stream, but it didn't really work. So we're going to just a kind of produced show. Once every 2 weeks. It's about 30 minutes long. You find it on YouTube on the site. So that's something new for us. Changing the content. We're still doing the news reporting. We do a lot of kind of analysis stuff in that, but we're trying to do more video, more podcasts, and that sort of thing.
Excellent. I'm just thinking. I'll talk to you later about this, but maybe you could look at maybe doing a radio show.
Radio, I know. I like that you are going down the radio route. I think that's cool.
This will blow your mind, right? You can actually do it from your own office with your own equipment, and we could put it out in the radio.
Right.
So
let's talk about that later.
Kevin's got a plan, you can tell.
He's talking about it in live radio just to put you under extra pressure. Say yes, say yes.
And are you guys, is this, Indie Live Radio, is this, you're doing less live streams?
No,
or-
this is actually, believe it or not, right, we've got to a stage now that with all the equipment, we can actually do live streams. This is an Independence Live production. This is a, guest interview at Independence Live, right? But I'm also putting it out over the radio.
Right.
Right.
So it's a twin thing.
Yeah, I can do other, interviews with Independence Live. We used to do so much, right? But getting the equipment, getting into live radio sorted out is you can imagine, quite time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Just building it up. It seems like very small steps, doesn't it, Marlon? It's just like very small step, but everything's moving forward. So we hope to do more of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
And. Well, we'll be also looking at trying to get more shows, people to do live shows for us.
Right.
And you don't need to actually be in the office to do a live show or recorded. We do a lot of podcasts as well. We've got Dingle Scots for Yes doing stuff for us and others, The fella down in Ayrshire, JJ, he does live music shows, a bit adulty. You wouldn't put them out during the day, but he does them a few days a week for us and stuff, So we'll build that up.
And how's the funding? It's always a challenge for us and for you, I'm sure.
Wait, don't talk about it. I'll kick that can down the road for a little bit. It's always an issue, isn't it? And there's really good pro-indie crowdfunders going on at the moment. I think there's 5. I think Ice Scott, Phantom Power, Andy Poster Boy. I don't know. Who else? Broadcasting Scotland. There's quite a lot, and they're all, very good, projects and stuff that's going on. So it's always tough doing the crowdfunder.
Yeah, well,
What's the grey hair?
tag us in, and we'll give you plenty of social media. You post stuff on our Facebook and on Twitter. And
this is actually been live streamed to CommonSpace.
to CommonSpace's Facebook. Good.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
great.
putting this out there as well. And it's gone to 45%. The 45%, that's got a really big reach. So if you're watching from there, hello. Yeah, hello CommonSpace watchers, hello 45% watchers. And it's going out to Independence Live as well as YouTube and Twitter Periscope. So but hopefully.
If I'd known it was going out in video, I might have put on something a bit different.
Well, exactly. The thing is, because it's an Independence Live production, right? There's no music, right? Because we can't put music through a live stream for copyright music reasons. We'd just get Facebook would just pull us, right? Which is why after we finish the Independence Live production, we'll maybe have I'll have to stop the live streams, and I'll have to put on my Indie Live Radio hat. Right, and we'll flick over to Indie Live Radio because Ben's got a few tunes.
You make that little noise when you start.
Yeah, Indie Live Radio. So
I'll tune in just for that.
So I've got both of you to do a little recording for us later.
All right.
So
okay.
we need to
Try
lock
to
the
do
doors. Don't let them out.
Pensioners for Independence.
Excellent.
I'm not even trying.
You've got to do it. You've got to do it, Ben. You're not getting let out. We've got the keys. It'll be a kidnap job if you don't do it. Going over. So we're going to get Ben, and we'll be playing a few of his tracks later on. And I've seen what he's asking to get played, and the boy's done well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't recognise any of them,
Did-
but
oh, no,
I'm a
no.
pensioner.
Well,
You must know Radiohead.
No.
trying to laugh at the mic.
They did once find some Beatle tracks to play for me when I was in, but that's about the last time I listened.
Oh, we've got tons. Well, okay, I'll tell you what. Right, we've got a minute of this break. No, I'll just bring you up to speed here. We've got about a minute left. Right, this is when I have to do a quick shifty. I have to stop the live streams before the radio goes on because we're using the same equipment for Indie Live Radio and Independence Live, so it's brilliant, right? Being able to do this. So I've got my just try not to panic here. Okay, so we've got like 40 seconds left. Ben, 40 seconds, then I'm going to have to stop this.
What am I to say?
CommonSpace.
CommonSpace, commonspace.scot, at the CommonSpace, Facebook, Instagram, we're on all these different platforms, so check us out and follow us. You can write articles for the site, we're always interested in writing opinion pieces. Is that my 40 seconds
Yeah,
up?
I've got to go, got to get this live stream off. Okay, bye folks. Bye, live streamers, watchers off.